Good morning, grade 5-6 class. Welcome to the lecture. Now, as you can see, the format here is a little bit different than we've done before. I'm going to take my face off the screen here in just a moment so you can just concentrate on what I'm writing on. All right, but I wanted you to see my face and say hi to you first before we got started. All right, so I'm going to just take my picture off now, and I'm going to be teaching you how to do this work. All right, so the topic for today is mean, median, and mode. Now, all of these things are ways that we help us understand data better. Our next unit is going to be on graphing, and what we want to do is we want to use this topic to help us understand how these things work a little bit better, okay? So we're going to start out with something called the mean, right there, okay? And a mean is another word for average. And in your work, you're going to see a lot of times where they ask you for an average. That just means exactly the same thing as a mean. Average, mean, exactly the same thing. Don't get confused about the two. They're just the same word, two different words for the same thing, like large. Oh, let me not use that. Let me go switch back to a pen. Like large and big mean the same thing. Average and mean mean the same thing. Okay? So a mean is a way that we use to kind of figure out what the general thing is. So if we have, say, a bar graph, and it looks like this, okay, oh, that's why, okay, and we have different heights of bar graph, okay, and you see all of those are different heights. When we're finding a mean, what we're trying to do is we're trying to figure out kind of where the line goes off, where everything kind of flattens out. So that wouldn't be where the line would go. The line would maybe go somewhere like here, because all of this would go down and fill that hole, and this would go down and fill that hole. In other words, we want to just figure out kind of where the middle of everything is, but it's a middle called a mean. There's actually 3 different ways to find a middle. A mean is one of those ways, okay? So the way we do that is we add together all of these numbers. So in this case, we go 7 plus 9 plus 5 plus 19 plus 21 plus 4 plus 6 plus 5. We add them all together. And that gives us the number 76. When we add them all together, we get 76. If you don't add correctly, you can make a mistake here, and then you'll end up not having the correct answer because this number is wrong. If this number is wrong, you can't get the correct answer. Now this is just step 1. Step 2 then takes this answer right here that you found, in this case 76, and it divides it by the number of what they call addends. Okay, but basically what that means is we divide it by how many digits there are here. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 digits. So we divide by 8. All right, and when we do that math, we get the number 9.5. Now, I didn't put a unit of measure in here, but let's say these were all in centimeters. I would have to write centimeters here, okay? The unit of measure is part of the answer. Don't forget it. All right, now let's go down to this one right here. So this is another example of adding it all together. So in this case, I go 102 plus 43 plus 63 plus 64 plus 72 plus 55 plus 97 plus 81 plus 67. See how I added in every single number there? And the answer to that, when I do all the math, is 644. And again, we go down to our second step here. So that was step 1. Let me write that with the black. Now we go down to step 2. And step 2 means we take this number right here. And again, we have to make sure that number is right, because if it's not right, the second part isn't going to work correctly. And we write 644, and we divide it by the number of addends. Now, up here, we did 8 because I had 8 numbers. Let's see how many numbers I have here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I have 9 numbers, so this time I divide by 9. All right, and now when I do this math, I actually get a decimal number that goes on forever. You won't get that in your work, so don't worry about it, all right? So the answer for this is, let's call it 71.6, okay? And you see how I have a decimal in that number? If you get a decimal, you need to write your decimal number. Now on here, I don't actually have any like this, but you will have some questions in your work where you have to do decimal numbers. So for example, let's say you have a 4.3 plus a 6, your numbers are 4.3, 6, 9.6, 2.1, 4, 8.3, okay? And I'm going to remind you of this now because it's something that you're going to have to do really well, is when you have decimal numbers, you have to line up your decimals. So 4.3 is here. 6 is not here. That's wrong. The decimal in the 6 is right there. See my red? Okay. So when we write this next number, the 6 goes here underneath the 4. There's a decimal there. There's a 0. We don't have it. Then we go 9.6, 2.1. Again, this is a 4 here. So the 4 goes here. Remember to line up your decimals. And then 8.3. I'm going to erase this afterwards. So don't worry that I'm writing over top of stuff. And then we have to add it all up. But do you see how the 4 lines up like this? And the 6 lines up like this. They do not line up like this. That is wrong. Please do not do that. All right, so I'm just going to erase this. That was just an example to show you how to properly line up your decimal numbers. We have learned this before. There's no reason for any of you to get this wrong. So if you do, I am not going to be happy. All right, actually, and then there's more here. We've got the 9.6. And we haven't put the 2.1 and the 8.3, but we're not doing this math right here. When we're done, though, we're going to divide by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 numbers. See? Divided by 6 because I have 6 add-ins right here. But make sure you do your lineup correctly. Okay? So that's what it means to do a mean or an average. Next, we're going to talk about modes. All right? Right there, modes. Okay, now a mode is the easiest one of these all to do. I really don't think any of you are going to have any trouble with these. A mode is simply which number is the most. Which number happens the most? That's really simple. So if I go through here, I can see I've got a 7 there and I've got a 7 there. Okay, that's great. I've got a 9 here and a 9 here. Okay, good. I'm going to use this one. I've got a 5 here and a 5 here and a 5 here and a 5 here. There's only one 19, there's only one 21, there's only one 4. So the mode equals 5. That's really easy. 5 is the most frequent. Now if we go over here, we look again. Let's see, what do I have 2 of? Let's go back here. I've got 143 and I've got a 43 there. And let's see, I've got a 64 there and a 64 there. There's 102, there's 163, there's 172. Everything else is 1. So in this case, which is really interesting, I actually have 2 modes. The mode equals 43 and 64. And I have to write both of them. My answer is both. Don't pick one or the other, write both of them. If there's 2 modes, write 2. If there's 3 modes, write the 3 numbers that are all the same. Okay? Now let's go to the last one here. This is the median. Okay? And just before I get started on the median, I just want to show the grade 5s some work here. All right, so this is your workbook material. You'll notice right here, you've got some decimal numbers that you're adding up. Right? And those decimal numbers, the decimal goes there, the decimal goes there, and the decimal goes there. Make sure you line those numbers up correctly. This is going to look 18.4 plus 54.6 plus 36.0 plus 90.0 plus 36.0. See that? Add those together. Then, once we've done adding, in order to find the mean, you still have to divide by what number? You have to divide by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5 numbers. So you take your answer here. We don't know what it is. You take whatever that number is and you divide it by 5. And that is what you put over here in the mean. So you take this answer divided by 5 and put it there. Why divided by 5? Because there's 5 numbers here. This one has 6 numbers, so we divide by 6. This one has 7 numbers, so we divide by 7. First we add, then we divide by the number of numbers, okay? And do not forget to write your unit of measure. So these are kgs. These are degrees Celsius. These are centimeters squared. Do not forget to write that, okay? On the second page, you have the same thing, but now you just have to write it out here and you have to read it in a question here. 4 bags of candies, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's simple, okay? This one's a little bit harder because I have 3 big boxes with 64 marbles and I have 2 small boxes with 54 marbles. Well, I have to think about that. How many boxes of marbles do I have? I have 3 big boxes. I have 2 small boxes, which means I have 5 boxes of marbles. 5 boxes of marbles, which means how many big boxes? I have 64, 64, 64. 3 big boxes, 1, 2, 3. 2 small boxes, 54, 54. See that? 64, 64, 64 because I have 3 big boxes, 54, 54 because I have 2 small boxes. Those are the numbers I have to use. What's the mode? The number that's the most often. What's the median? Well, I have to add these together, don't I? I have to add the whole group. Add all. And then I'm going to divide by 5 because I have 5 boxes. This question is a very similar, you can't see what I just did there. This question here is very similar to that one up there. I'm not going to help you with this one. Think, 2 red apples, 4 green apples. Red apples are this much. Green apples are this much less. So the first question is how heavy is a green apple? And then the second question is how many green apples do I have? I have 4 green apples. So how often do I have that number? Okay. So at this point, grade 5s, you can get started on your work. I have to do one more explanation for the grade 6s, and that is something called a median. And a median number is really easy to find because it's in the middle. However, the numbers must be in order. This is critically important. So when I look at this set right here, I can see that 19 is in the middle, but that is not the median because I have not put the numbers in order. First, I have to put the numbers in order. So I've got 4, 5, 5. You see how I wrote 5 2 times? I did 4, then I did that 5, then I did that 5. Okay, I don't write just one 5, I write every 5 that I have. And I go 7, 9, 19, 21. 7, 9, 19, 21. I like to cross them out as I go along so that I just can tell which ones I've used and which ones I haven't. So in order to find the middle, I just go from each end. So there's 1 from each end, there's 2 from each end, there's 3 from each end, and 7 is left in the middle. So the median is 7. That's my answer. Now the next one is harder. So first off, putting them in order is a little bit tricky. So we want to make sure we get them in order. Let's see. If I look at this, 43 is my smallest. My next smallest is 63, then 64. See, I'm crossing them out so I make sure I don't miss anything. I missed something. I'm going to erase that. I missed 55. See right here, 55, 63, 64, 67, 70 is next, then 72, then 81, then 97, and then 102. 81, 97, 102. Now I have all of those. Now here's where it gets really interesting because as I go along, 1 on both ends, 1 on both ends, 1 on both ends, 1 on both ends, and I have 2 numbers left. Now what do I do with that? Well, it's actually really simple. I just find the average or the mean of these two numbers. I always have to reduce it to these two numbers. Then I just find the average or the mean. We already know how to find an average or mean. We add the two numbers together. And then what do? We divide by 2. So I add those two together, I get 137. Then I take my 137 and I divide it by 2 because I have two numbers. You might be tempted to divide it by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You might be tempted to divide it by 10 because there's 10 numbers, but I only added together two numbers. So why would I divide by 10? I have two numbers here, 1, 2. So I add those together, then I divide by 2. And when I do that, I get 68.5. And that is the median number, the middle number. So it's a number we don't actually have, but it is a number that fits in here. 68.5 is between those two numbers. That's how I know it's right. If I get an answer as a median that's not between these two numbers or the two numbers I found, then it's not a median number. Okay, and that's really that simple. That's all it takes to do these topics. There's a bit of math involved. You got to be accurate in your math, but that's all it takes. So now let's just look at your workbook activities very quickly. You have to find the mean and write it here. You have to have the median, find it here. You have to find the mode here. Why do they want you to put them in order? What's this thing here about putting it in order? You know why? Because you can't find the median if they're not in order. Okay? You can see here in these questions, they have some decimal numbers. Make sure you add your decimal numbers correctly, and make sure when you give your answers, you put your unit of measure. So in these ones, it's a liter. Here our unit of measure is going to be a kilogram. Down here, it's going to be a meter. All right. On this next page here, this one's a little bit trickier, but this is the clue for this missing item right here. Before you can do any math, you have to figure out what D is. You've got to figure out what goes there. And this is your clue that tells you what goes there. So you actually are going to have 4 numbers that you're working with here. 4. But right now you only have 3. So you've got to find your 4th number first. And then again, the same thing here, right here, is your clue for what goes in there. Make sure you fill in this before you do any math. And then when you're all done, you're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You're going to have 7 numbers that you have to work with. Okay? Now, this last question, these last 2 questions here, these are very similar to question number 8 in the grade 5 workbook. So if you listen to my explanation on the grade 5 workbook, you know how to do these. If you didn't listen to my explanation on the grade 5 workbook, then you might have a little bit of trouble with these. So I think you should go and look at the grade 5 workbook in order to solve this. But remember, they're 4 times 68 points. So how many times do I have 68? I have 68 1, 2, 3, 4 times, not just one time. And then the rest of the times, I got 72 points. So how many times do I have 72 points? Well, what's the rest? I had 10 in total. So that means 4. So I had 6 times where I had 72 points. So I've given you help on this one because I know sometimes it's hard to follow what these ones are asking for. But the next question is exactly the same, and I expect you to manage the last one on your own. All right, thanks for listening. Good luck with your assignment, and have fun.